How's it going, guys? It's K Cars, and in today's video, as you guys can see right here, we're actually going to be driving this 2017 Jeep Wrangler Rubicon Hard Rock. So a little bit different than what you guys are used to on the channel here, but let me give you guys a quick walk around and kind of talk about this Jeep first, and then we can go ahead and get inside and take it for a drive here. Like I said, this is a 2017. It's actually the last year that they produced the JK. So 2018 and newer is actually called the JL. Also a Rubicon Hard Rock, which is basically the top trim that you can get of these JKs. You can see right there the Rubicon logo. Wrangler Unlimited, so you can see it's also a 4-door. This one is mostly stock for the most part. It has Falcon Wild Peak all-terrain tires. And that's just the stock size right there. It has a few like cosmetic upgrades, such as this little body armor piece right here, this little tail light cover right there. All these tow hooks and stuff that you see, this is stock right here. Walk around to the front here. This is also kind of like a aftermarket body armor piece. So this basically just serves as armor, so if you don't have the straps that are holding the doors closed, so these things right here, if this is disconnected, it'll just let the door fly wide open. So this right here is just to prevent the doors from hitting the hood piece right here. Moving on to the front here, we do also have these tow hooks, which come stock on the Rubicon Hard Rock. Then we do have these KC highlights. Then I believe this light bar right here is from Oxbeam. So these are obviously aftermarket. And I can show you guys the switch right here inside. So the switches are actually mounted right over here. I'll turn those on so you guys can see what they look like real quick. So, you know, obviously super bright and very happy with how it's been driving. Yeah, I mean, they definitely light up the whole road at night. Very, very helpful as well. So, of course, with the Rubicon Hard Rock, you also do get the sway bar disconnect as well as front and rear diff lockers, and that comes completely stock on the Rubicon. And then something different about this one, as you guys can see, this one is actually a 6-speed manual. So of course you got the 3 pedals right there as well. So before you guys start asking a whole bunch of questions about this thing, let me just get this out of the way first. No, this is not my Jeep. I did not buy this Jeep. Still have the XJ and not planning to ever get rid of that thing. So let's get inside here, start this thing up and get started with the video. So of course, since it is a manual, clutch in, turn the key. And yes, this thing being a 2017, it still does have the like key ignition. So I believe the JL models actually have the push button start, which is, you know, pretty convenient. You know, especially since I think Jeep is planning to make those new Wranglers a lot more modern and kind of appealing to, you know, a larger audience instead of just off-road enthusiasts. Also, cool thing about this is that you get ducked every once in a while, which is, you know, if you guys are Wrangler guys, then you probably are familiar with ducks, I guess. All right, so manual transmission. With this one, you can actually start in 2nd gear just because 1st gear is so short. And you know, I will go over all of the like the off-road features, like the 4-wheel drive and stuff, but let's go ahead and get started. So we got 2nd gear right here. Like I said, you can start in 2nd gear pretty easily. Even if you're going up a slight incline, it's still possible, but if you're going up an incline, obviously you should be starting in 1st gear. So all right, so in this video, basically I wanted to talk about how this JK compares to my XJ. Then I'm also planning to make a separate video with this Jeep right here, taking it on a, you know, mild off-road trail, same trail that I took my Jeep on when it was completely stock, my XJ that is. So we're gonna see how the two compare, stock for stock. So obviously I took my XJ on this trail back when it was stock. So now we're gonna take this JK Rubicon on that same trail and kind of see how it compares, basically just doing a video comparison, talking about how this Jeep does in comparison to mine. But like I said, basically in this video I wanted to talk about kind of how the JK drives on the street compared to my XJ, and kind of go over a few of the features on this thing as well. So as I already said, this is a 2017, so the last model of the JK, and this is a Rubicon Hard Rock. So you get, you know, all the fancy features, all the fancy off-road features like the sway bar disconnect and the front and rear lockers. Just some quick stats about this Jeep. Like I said, 6-speed manual right here, 3.6 liter V6. I believe they call this the Pentastar. It makes 285 horsepower. So comparing that to my XJ, you guys all know that thing has the 4-liter inline 6 and it makes 190 crank horsepower stock. And I will say, you definitely can feel the difference in power driving this thing. You know, and the manual transmission probably helps with that as well, because in an automatic, it just shifts whenever the computer feels like it, whenever it feels like it's the most efficient point to shift at. And I do feel like if you're driving a manual transmission, you can definitely feel the power a lot better, because you're not just, it's not going to shift whenever it feels like it. So like you can stay in the power band as long as you want, basically, you know, up until the red line, of course. So that's one good thing about having manual. And then obviously for off-roading, it's good to have manual because you have more control. But then obviously in the automatic Jeeps, you do have the manual capability, but it's not like a true manual because you just slap it in manual mode, and that way you can also keep it in gear. So there's always going to be people that do prefer the true manual like this, which is awesome. I think it's great to have a manual where you can actually control it a lot better. But you know, the automatic with the manual option is still an option. So it's kind of the best of both worlds with the Jeeps. Is, you know, you can buy the basic sport model of the Wrangler and get in an automatic and just have it be an on-road driver, or if you're buying it for off-roading, you can get, you know, the top of the line Rubicon that already comes with lockers, sway bar disconnects, and mud tires or all-terrain tires. And you can also get a 6-speed manual in this thing. So I believe the JLs, they still make those with the manual, which I'm pretty surprised they haven't completely gotten rid of that, but I think it's a great thing that they're you know, keeping the manual option. Now, talking about on-road drivability here, you know, how it soaks up bumps, it's a whole lot better than my XJ. So we're going over a few bumps here and a few turns. You guys can see it's soaking them up perfectly, barely even feel them. And that's definitely one thing that I also notice whenever I drive this Jeep after driving my XJ, is that my XJ is a lot more bumpy and the suspension is a lot more bouncy as well. Now on my Jeep, I do have a 3-inch lift, so of course that also plays a part in making the suspension a little bit more bouncy and stiff. And this is a stock suspension that the Rubicon JK actually came with, so it definitely is a lot more smooth, this Jeep. Obviously takes turns a little bit better as well. And you know, I can't really, it's not really a fair comparison to compare the JK to my XJ. Obviously this being a 2017, it's like 16 years newer than my XJ, so obviously not really a fair comparison. But you know, I did want to give you guys a quick comparison video on how a new Wrangler compares to my old Cherokee. So like I was saying, it goes around turns a lot better than my Jeep. That's to be expected, you know, because if I go around this turn here, you can see I can hold the steering wheel straight. I'm not like, I don't feel like the Jeep is about to flip over, basically. And in my Jeep, if I took a turn like that, then I probably would have had to slow down a lot more than I had to with this Jeep. So you can look at this turn right here, for example. Super smooth. It does have a lot of body roll considering it is a Jeep. But you know, not nearly as much as I would have in my XJ. On-road drivability, I would say that this Jeep is better. Obviously, you would probably expect that because it's 16 years newer. But one thing that I will say that I prefer my Jeep over this Jeep is actually the throttle response. So for this Jeep, for some reason, I feel like the throttle response is super delayed. And I'm not really sure why, because in my XJ, it's not delayed nearly as much as this Jeep. And you know, I'm not really sure why it's delayed so much in here, but like if I'm downshifting and I want to rev match, if I blip the throttle, literally nothing will happen. So put it in neutral here and I'll just blip the throttle, show you guys what I'm talking about. Okay, so I just went halfway and the revs didn't even go up at all. So really not sure why it's like that. Maybe I don't really know, maybe a tune could help that, but I know tuning isn't really something that you do to a Jeep like this unless you're, you know, modifying the engine or putting a supercharger on it, which I know people do. But yeah, the throttle response is definitely one thing. It's definitely one complaint that I have with this Jeep, that my XJ has better throttle response. And of course, the throws on this manual transmission are a whole lot longer than I would like, I guess. Of course, we've got to do the Jeep wave here. JL driver didn't even wave back, but that's all right. But yeah, I was saying the throws on this manual transmission are extremely long. So, you know, it's not a sports car, so I wouldn't expect them to be, you know, super short. I'm sure you can probably buy like an aftermarket short throw shifter for this thing, but it's really not needed for a Jeep like this. You know, you're not going to be drag racing this thing where you're going to have to shift very quickly. So in that type of case, then yes, a short throw shifter would be very useful, because you could tighten up those shifts, make them a lot shorter, and, you know, make your shifting a lot more efficient. But, you know, for a Jeep like this, it's, you know, it's really not needed. So I'll give you guys a quick example of how the throws are here. So first gear, second gear, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. So you can see how long they are. So there's a whole bunch of travel between gears. So it's definitely, I wouldn't call it a complaint or a downside or anything like that, but it's just something to point out about the JK shifter. So you do have a lot more time in between shifts. If you guys can hear the RPMs here. So yeah, I mean, it's obviously not a complaint or anything, but just something that I wanted to point out that I noticed. So to be honest, I would say my only actual like complaint about this Jeep is the throttle response that I mentioned before. But then again, it's a Jeep, not a sports car, so you're not really gonna need great throttle response, I guess. But with this Jeep, it definitely could be better, because if I want to blip the throttle really quick to rev match and downshift, and sometimes, you know, it literally doesn't do anything, like I showed you guys before. And then also something else I wanted to mention about this Jeep that is a lot better than in my Jeep is actually the handling, acceleration, and braking. So I already talked about, you know, acceleration. It does have 285 horsepower versus the 190 in my XJ. So obviously the acceleration is expected to be better. And also, since it is a manual transmission, I also feel like you can feel the power better in a manual, because you can hold it in gear while you're in the power band for, you know, as long as you want to, since you have full control over the transmission with a manual. You know, with my XJ, you really can't do that since it's an automatic. It has the, I believe they call it the AW4 transmission, the automatic in the XJs. Yeah, one thing is that the acceleration definitely feels a lot better in the JK when compared to my XJ. Then also one thing I wanted to talk about is the braking and handling. So obviously I already talked about the handling, talking about how, you know, it goes around turns a lot better. I don't have to slow down nearly as much as I do with my Jeep. You know, there's not as much body roll, but obviously you can't treat it like a sports car. So you're not going to be able to, you know, take this thing around a track or anything like that and expect to keep up with regular sports cars. And then also something else that I wanted to talk about is the braking ability of this thing. So that's definitely one other thing that I noticed when I drive this Jeep after driving my XJ, is that the brakes work a whole lot better. Now obviously I'm just comparing stock for stock. I know I can do a brake conversion on my XJ to make them a lot better and a lot more responsive, but I don't really have a need to do that right now, because the brakes, you know, they work. I'm just saying that they're not as responsive and not as powerful as they are in this JK. And obviously that's to be expected when you're comparing a 2017 JK to a 2001 XJ. Now I will say though, as you guys can see, we're climbing up this hill right here, and if you guys can hear, the RPMs are pretty high. I'm in fourth gear right now, going 50, trying to get up to the speed limit of 55. And I will say, the acceleration on the JK is better at lower speeds, but I will say if you're at higher speeds, then I do think the acceleration on my XJ is actually a little bit better. Even though I do have that little downshifting issue, where if I'm going up an incline, it doesn't want to downshift to accelerate. But once it does actually downshift, I do think the acceleration at higher speeds is better in my XJ than it is in the JK, but that's only for higher speeds. So one time I was in my XJ driving to the shop to get all the rust repairs done, and my dad was in this Jeep right behind me, and we were going up quite a steep hill at, you know, probably 50 miles an hour maybe. And I was way ahead. Like, this Jeep right here that my dad was driving was way far behind. And I want to say that's probably mostly due to the weight of the XJ compared to the JK. Now, I don't know exactly how much the JK weighs, but I want to say, I probably guess around 4,600 maybe. And the XJ weighs around 3,400. So that's definitely a huge difference. And I definitely do think that plays a huge role in having better acceleration at higher speeds, because getting a huge brick like this Jeep that weighs, you know, over 1,000 pounds more to accelerate faster when you're already traveling at a higher speed, it's going to be more difficult than if you have a lighter XJ that's already traveling at a higher speed. You know, it's just going to be easier to get it to accelerate faster at higher speeds. So going around some more turns here, some more twisty roads. You can see it's handling all these turns very well, no issues whatsoever. super comfortable as well. Like I already mentioned, it soaks up all the bumps very easily, very well. Stock suspension too, so you don't have to worry about any kind of like bouncy suspension either. But yeah, all these potholes and everything, all these turns, soaking up everything very well. And if I let go of the steering wheel here, we'll see if it stays straight or not. Okay, so yeah, I mean, that was pretty straight. Obviously, we had a turn coming up. No shaking in the steering wheel either. It's staying completely straight if I let go of it. And, you know, it does have a good bit of play, like you would expect. But I will say, it is less steering wheel play than in my XJ. In my XJ, you could literally turn it probably this much and not get any kind of steering input. But with this Jeep, that's basically all you get in steering wheel play. So, you know, definitely more tight steering in this thing. Easier to control. Let's get a quick downshift here. 4th gear. Go around this turn. Let's see what happens. See how it handles. Yeah, so I mean, I slowed down a lot more than I needed to for this turn, but yeah, so I mean, for rev matching, if you want to downshift and rev match in this thing, you kind of have to just hold the throttle down for the RPMs to go up. You can't really just blip the throttle like I was saying before. So if you just blip the throttle really quick, nothing will happen. Like the RPMs won't even change at all. So if you want to rev match and downshift, you kind of just have to hold down the throttle to actually make the RPMs go up. So I will say, for highway driving, I would definitely prefer this JK over my XJ. Even though I did say that my XJ has better acceleration at higher speeds, I will say the JK definitely handles a whole lot better. Like I said, it does have better braking ability, better handling ability. So if you have to make a quick maneuver or swerve to, you know, avoid an accident or something that's in the road, then the JK would definitely be a lot better for that. Obviously, being a more modern vehicle, it's gonna have, you know, more features that are better for the average person who isn't going to be too focused on off-roading. They're going to be more focused on, you know, highway driving, how comfortable it is and stuff like that. So I do think, you know, obviously the JK is better all around for on-road and off-road, but for off-roading, you can definitely build up an XJ to be better than the JK, obviously. And also, one huge advantage that you have with the XJ is the weight. Like I already mentioned, I want to say the XJ is probably over 1,000 pounds lighter than the JK, which is a huge advantage. You know, obviously I'm just comparing the 4-door to the 4-door. All right guys, so we made it here to the trail that I wanted to take this Jeep on. So I'm going to make this a separate video here, but I did want to kind of finish up this video. So we're going to be taking this Jeep all the way up this trail. Now obviously doesn't look like anything right here. Obviously it's just a gravel road, but you know, it's nothing too crazy, but it does get a little bit more interesting up ahead there. So I'm going to show you guys the Jeep here one last time. So one thing I also did want to mention is that this Jeep actually did come stock with LED headlights and fog lights, which is super useful. I think you can see how them turned on right there. So that's one thing I definitely do like, is that the headlights already come stock with LEDs. So you know, you don't have to be changing them out or anything like that. And obviously with the XJ, those things come with the, you know, the stock super dim halogen headlights, which I wasn't really a huge fan of. It's a super easy swap to put in LEDs in there. So, you know, not really a big deal. But just one advantage is that this Jeep right here did come stock with LEDs. I will admit, I have been thinking about maybe getting a JL, but recently I have been thinking about getting a Wrangler TJ. I think that would go along with my XJ a lot better. And, you know, obviously I'm not planning to ever get rid of my XJ. So I really do think a TJ would go along better with my XJ and, you know, kind of go along better with the collection here. So let me know down below in the comments if you guys would like to see a TJ on the channel. Yeah guys, that's gonna do for this video. Like I said, just wanted to do a quick comparison of this JK to my XJ and kind of just talk about how it drives on road and off road. And like I said, we're also going to be doing an off-roading video with the JK right here. And this is actually the same trail that I took my XJ on back when it was completely stock. So that's going to be a separate video here. So make sure you guys are subscribed so you don't miss that. But yeah, that's going to do it for this video. If you guys have anything to add, definitely drop that down in the comment section below. And if you guys have any questions or comments, also drop those down in the comment section below. And if you guys have any video suggestions for videos you'd like to see in the future, make sure to also drop those down in the comment section below. And if you guys liked this video or found it entertaining, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.